All right, it looks like we're up and running. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today is the 16th of March, 2021. I'm Roy Potter, and welcome as you come in. You might be saying, well, Jay, why didn't you give us a little heads up on this? Well, I have to take advantage of the time when I get it, and so here we are. So I hope I get some mods in here to help me keep the room clean. Hello, everyone. Hi, Roosevelt. Yeah, you're kind of the reason why I'm doing this, Roosevelt. This is your fault. This is your fault, Roosevelt. You and Nancy Morgan Hartz. Yeah, you guys have been talking to me on the other side of things here behind the scenes. And so I thought I'd better come on here and say a few things. Again, hello, everybody. Bless all you too. Crazy world we live in. It's just going to get crazier and more dangerous. And you have to stand by your principles. I'm going to turn this other light on. I was thinking I could go without it, but let me just check on it here for just a minute. I think the light that I have is fine, but let's see what this does. Nah, I think I like that better. So we'll go ahead and do that too. Okay, I was going to try to just use one. Again, the types of lights that I have, especially when I'm traveling or something, I have to use kind of what's available, even though I do. Yeah, I know Ammon was arrested. I know. That's why I mean, this whole thing with this mask thing is totally outrageous. It's tyranny beyond measure. It's unscientific. It's training. But that's not what I want to talk about today, although I love Ammon Bundy to pieces and his bravery, his courage. This is going, he's constantly being persecuted for standing up for true principle. Okay, looks good and sounds good. Thanks, Roosevelt. Anyway, back to the lights here. So I have to use what I've got. I've got one studio light I take with me, but it does make me look a little yellow, especially when I use my camera because I don't have a white balance adjustment on there. So please don't think that I've got jaundice or that I'm intoxicated or I will be shortly. Well, not really intoxicated, but I do plan on having a dram or two of scotch. Okay, why did I decide to do this today? Well, I kind of hinted at it just a few minutes ago. Nancy Morgan Hart was DMing me behind the scenes, as well as Roosevelt, and also Crow's Play One, also known as Sally, asking me particularly about the new Dead Sea Scroll find. If you've been listening to that, Mark Pantano did a short report on it today, but it is up in the news media to some extent. And I'm not sure what to say about it yet, but I've put it on my list here because of, I thought I was doing this right, but maybe I did this wrong. I've got my stuff over. Maybe I should have put it on the other side. It kind of looks like, huh? All right. Well, dang it, because you can't see it. Okay, you're gonna have to give me a minute here. I'm gonna change this around a little bit. I put it, like I said, when I'm traveling, I don't really know what I'm doing. So this is this is all wrong for you guys. I thought I had it right and I didn't. So let me take a minute and do this. Talk amongst each other while I reset this up, because this ain't gonna work for you. I can tell that right now. I should have tested it out, but I forget that the camera, when I first put it up, does a reverse when I'm doing the setup, and then when it comes up on the regular uh, live stream, it actually does it right. So let me put this down for a second. Pardon me, I'm very sorry about this, but it's just not fair to you. So I'm going to reset this over here. Should only take a second because your chat interferes with it, doesn't it? Now it's better, right? I'm blocked, but it's not. I am so sorry. I am so sorry. Let me bring that up a little closer here. I won't even tie it in. I think it's going to stay there without the reflection. I usually worry about the reflection in there, but you got a little one there, so let me back it up. Okay, there we go. All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, perfect. That's better. I'd rather you not see me and see the subject matter here because this is very important. So, I talked the other day about the sons of Zebedee being the sons of thunder, and I gave you a bunch of information. Before I go any further today, let me say this. I'm not trying to convince anybody of anything. I'm not trying to force my concepts on you or my understanding of God necessarily. What I'm trying to do is give you the tools so that you can search these things out for yourself and not have to rely on your preachers, on your pastors, on your the people that give sermons in your churches or whatever, or even scholars, and I hate to say it, even the Pope and the cardinals and the bishops and the priests and the parishes, all of that. Not that those people, well, the Pope we can talk about, that might be a problem, but they're not. I wouldn't say that they're intentionally telling you things that don't give you the whole picture. I'm just saying that they probably aren't aware of it because most of these people are institutionalized. Even the things that they've been taught to teach you when they go to seminary or whatever are pretty institutionalized and pretty compartmented. And to think outside the box takes some courage. As a matter of fact, it takes a lot of courage. Liza Jean is here. Oh, you've been busy already. Yeah, thank you. Like I said, yeah, this is going to be more of that. So I didn't go into any real depth or explanation the other day when I talked about the sons of Zebedee. You'll notice that I put a comment on that last video about the sons of Zebedee. I put a comment on it to tell you that there probably is a difference between the James of James and John, sons of Zebedee, sons of thunder, and James, son of Alphaeus, because there were two. But the reason why I did that is because I'm hoping, and maybe I'm coming on too soon and I haven't given you enough chance to really check into things, but I want you to have critical thinking. You have to learn, even in scriptural study, that you have to use things like historical method. It's very important to do that. You have to, it's almost like checking information in the news media. You got to get different sources and then try to figure out what the truth is. All right. So that's why I've done that. I don't want to dictate to you what to think about it as much as I want you to ask the questions, because that's the most important thing to know. First of all, to know what questions to ask, and then how to go about finding the answer that best fits your ability to absorb it. Okay? Some people can't go any further than the milk of the gospel. Just Jesus saves you. That's as far as some people can go. But if you want to know the meat of the gospel, all right, then you have to have a little more sophistication. I'm not saying it's I'm not going to say it's necessary. In one way it is, but I'm not going to say it's a question of salvation at that point. It's a question of knowledge and understanding and wisdom. Let me put it that way. So I can't tell you for certain that I know who these people are because the names repeat themselves, as I mentioned in the comment on the video about the sons of Zebedee. I told you about the garbling of the names, the repetition of the names. For instance, there's the question of Mary, the mother of Jesus. Did she really have a sister as well by the name of Mary? How odd would that be? A sister-in-law? Maybe, okay, but certainly not a sister. And why do I bring that up? Well, it's because of this one right here. It's called the Proto-Evangelium of James, also known as the Gospel of James. Now, my handwriting is bad, as I told you about before, but go ahead and when we're done here, go to your search engine and type in the Gospel of James, which is also the Proto-Evangelium of James, okay? Why am I bringing that up? Because it gives you some further information about particularly Mary, the mother of Jesus, particularly about that and what her occupations were, what she was doing prior to being notified by Gabriel that she was going to have Jesus. This is not the Epistle of James, okay? That's not what this is. It's the Gospel of James. Now, there are some problems right up front, and I'm admitting to them. The Proto-Evangelium was probably written close to the 2nd century AD, not in the 1st century AD. Very likely it's either a copy of the original, or it's somebody writing under a pseudonym of James, and I understand that. But we're still getting closer to the historical events. Do you understand? It's like for instance, you have biblical scholars, especially in the Catholic Church, right? You have St. Augustine, for instance, St. Jerome. You also have Irenaeus, people like that. Well, they were hundreds of years separated from the events as well. But they're looking at things like this Proto-Evangelium of James. They're around the time. Yes, they're removed still, but they're still better than just trying to understand things from our 20th and 21st century understandings of things. We're so historically removed. For instance, the King James Version, it's not bad, and I'm going to use it today again, but I also understand the weaknesses that are in it, both political and historical. I understand, and translation wise, I understand those. So that's where you have to have historical method. And I can't teach you that here. I'm just telling you that it's a lot like the scientific method. That's why they call it the historical method. And you have to be able to check things out. You use multiple sources and then try to come up with a possible idea of what really happened. Okay? And you have to take in consideration the biases and opinions and the sacred cows of the people at the time. You have to, or else you'll get a false idea. So, with that background, let's go back to what happened this morning. Of course, like I said, I got a notice last night from Nancy Morganhart, and then this morning from Roosevelt. And then I got a question from Sally of Crow's Play 1, who wanted to tell me, what do I think about the new Dead Sea Scrolls find? If you've been watching the news, as I mentioned here a few minutes ago, Mark Pantano covered it just very briefly, which is all I'm going to do here because I haven't seen them yet. I can't really tell you much about them. Other than that, I'm a little suspicious. Let me give you a little background. And it has to do with the original Dead Sea Scrolls, and I call it clues here, and the dispersion of the people after the destruction of the Second Temple. Okay? In other words, Rome had gone to war with the people in Judea, and they destroyed Jerusalem. The Romans did, right? And then a lot of people fled the area. Some went to Masada, and I'm not going to get into that today, although I've talked about that possibly being the site of the Perusia. If you don't know what Perusia is, look it up. It's a return of Jesus that may have saved them. And Eleazar was actually a relative of Jesus. He was the commander at Masada at the time. That's my take on it from studying the history and balancing it against Josephus and against the New Testament and some other things. But let's go back now, and I'll talk about the Dead Sea Scroll clues here in just a minute. The new Dead Sea Scrolls that were found, and they've already carbon dated them and all this, and there's a whole lot of difficulties with what I'm hearing. First of all, there are Greek texts that were brought up primarily initially of Zechariah and Nahum. They're Old Testament prophets. Zechariah kind of more of a major prophet, Nahum more of a minor prophet. Why are they in Greek if they were at the Dead Sea Scroll? Well, the story is because the Dead Sea Scrolls were all in Hebrew or Aramaic, okay? Because that was the sacred language. That's how they would do things. The translation into Greek, why would they hide a Greek transcript of Zechariah when their sacred texts they keep in Hebrew? They didn't need to hide them in the Qumran area. Okay, do you see why I'm suspicious of them? And the fact that they're in Greek, not Hebrew or Aramaic. Big problem. And Zechariah has to do very much with our time. Very similar to Jeremiah and Isaiah, portions of Isaiah. So why is it that the Israeli Antiquities Authority and their archaeological dig found this Greek translation of Zechariah and Nahum? Well, I have my suspicions. And all I'm going to say about it now until I get a chance to look at them And it'll be a while. They've got to piece them together. I imagine usually they're not all together. They're usually in fragments. I doubt that the whole scroll is there. But for these people that are fleeing the Romans, why would they bother to bury a Greek translation of Zechariah? I don't buy it. I don't buy it. Okay? So I have my questions about this new supposed Dead Sea Scroll find and what its purpose is, especially in convincing people of this day and age of a new Messiah, of, I'm going to say, the Antichrist. Now, I'm going to get in trouble here, and I might get thrown off of YouTube for saying this, but I'll try to guard my words. With all that's going on in that state there in the Middle East, okay, you all should know which one I'm talking about. There's a belief amongst those people that they are the Messiah without metaphor. And I've talked about this before. Well, under the circumstances as it's rolling out now, that place is showing itself to be, if not the Antichrist itself, at least its representation in the nation states of the world. So I could get into more detail on that. I don't want to do that here. I'll probably do it on LBRY Odyssey, because you talk like that and they automatically want to say that you're anti-Semitic. Well, I'm more Semitic. I have Semite blood in me, you know? So that's ridiculous. Who you can't talk about is who controls you and rules you. All I'll say is that with what's going on there right now, being the model, I mean, we have China, and then we have that place. And unfortunately, that place is doing some horrible things to its people in preparation for exporting it to the world. You know that that state is very much involved in the entire cyber menu. Let me put it that way. Everything to do with cyber control, security, access, etc. That place has put itself up on top. It is almost ahead of the beast of the sea. I don't want to get there too far, okay? But I've talked about these things vaguely before, and I really think that that's the case. Evil things are happening there, and they want to export it. And I talked about it very, very slightly on the last video, and I basically said, of course, that they're doing to their people what they complained about the Germans doing. Okay, and I think everybody understands that. So why is that? It's because they're not who they say they are. Jesus said it that way too. I'm not saying everybody there isn't. I'm saying the people that rule them are not who they say they are. So again, the new DSS find, I'm very suspicious of it. I can't really comment on it until I see it, but my basic understanding at this point is that it's a translation, or it's a scroll with the prophet Zechariah, the book of Zechariah in Greek, and the prophet Nahum in Greek. That makes no sense to me. There would be no reason to hide those. So something's amiss, and I think it has to do something with frankly, the New World Order. I don't trust the IAA, the Antiquities Authority. Okay, isn't it terrible? We have to guard our speech here. It's just absolutely outrageous. What are why do I say that? Well, because there are Dead Sea Scroll clues. And the Dead Sea Scroll clues, the Dead Sea Scrolls, as I mentioned the other night, were written primarily during the Maccabean period on up through the destruction of the Second Temple, which is 70 AD. Right in there, okay? A lot of it was during the Maccabean period, but as I explained before, especially the marriage practices of the Herodians were not matched in the Maccabean dynasties. They just weren't. So it's definitely talking about the Herodian people, which were there during Christ's time, okay? In other words, those things that happened in the Dead Sea Scrolls were hidden for so long because it would reveal the truth about the beginnings of the Christian era. And it really did have things to do with Qumran and the Essenes and Jesus, who was probably Well, and I talked about that before. That was his calling. That wasn't really his name, but we don't really need to go there. The only reason why I mention is because the Dead Sea Scrolls do talk about Yeshua, but not in the sense of an individual, not of a personality. The Dead Sea Scroll clues tell us that, but they do talk about other personalities. And James, this one right here, the one that I talked about the other night, especially the James, son of Alphaeus, which I kind of put aside the other day for a reason. Again, I want you to look these things up for yourself. James was the teacher of righteousness during the time uh, right after John the Baptist died. He became the teacher of righteousness in the Qumran community. In other words, he became the high priest, the recognized high priest of Israel, not the one that was in the Herodian temple under Herod, because that made the Herodian temple not the true temple of God. Boy, people are going to get upset about that. But that's just a fact. So there were two high priests at the time after Jesus was crucified, actually just prior to when John the Baptist was beheaded, because he was the teacher of righteousness, the recognized high priest at that time. There was the high priest of the Herodian rulers, Caiaphas. You'll all know the name Caiaphas, right? He's the one that took Jesus and arrested him illegally at night and then had his trial at night. That's Caiaphas. He's the Herodian imposter high priest. He did not have the rights to hold that position. In those days, it was John the Baptist. And after they killed John the Baptist, James, the brother of Jesus, became the teacher of righteousness. That you get from understanding what happens in Josephus, the historian, who was a traitor to his own people and went over to the Romans to save his life. And you also get it from some other records. Okay, I'm just going to put it that way for right now. So, why do I bring up that James was the high priest at that time, not Caiaphas? Caiaphas was the impostor. James was the real high priest. And he was a Melchizedek priest as well. He held both. He held the position of Aaron as the high priest, and he also held the Melchizedek priesthood, which gets into some real difficulty, but it has to do with Jesus saying, or God saying that Jesus was a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. That also went to James. I won't explain how right now. I'm just giving you some information so that you can kind of start thinking about these things. This is going to be very general, even though it's going to get kind of detailed in another way. Okay, so the dispersion happens, and a lot of the Jews flee Judea and Palestine. And of course, one group goes to Masada. And I've talked about that before, and that's where I talked about, again, the Perugia that happened. The Romans go up there and they don't find anybody there, so they have to say they all committed suicide. I do believe that Jesus came and saved those people. I do believe that. And I do believe that Eleazar, who was the commander of Masada, was a very close relative of Jesus. Okay, I do believe that. Nancy probably wants me to get into that in a little more detail, but not yet, Nancy. I got to kind of prepare him for through. James, the son of who? Alphaeus. Alphaeus. Okay, it's in the list of the 12 apostles. So the dispersion happened, and then, of course, Masada was defeated, or they just escaped. And then there was another rebellion against Rome called the Bar Kokhba Rebellion in about 130 AD. And that's where this new DSS thing becomes kind of critical, because they're trying to say that that's probably because it was written, this Zechariah copy, it's dating to about 2nd AD, 200 AD, the 2nd century AD. Well, that would rhyme with the Bar Kokhba rebellion. But again, my question is, why would they hide a Greek translation of Zechariah? It doesn't make any sense. Or Nahum. So there's something else going on there, but we're still talking about a dispersion of these people leaving. And I bring that up. I know I'm flowing here real fast. A lot of people want to know about the Gnostic Gospels. just prior to the discovery of the original Dead Sea Scrolls, they found some codices. They're kind of like books. They're not scrolls. They're books. In a place called Nag Hammadi, Egypt. And these are really strange. I mean, they talk about the hypostasis of the archons and the archon um, pantheon, I guess I'd call it. There are a lot of different things in there. There's the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Judas, the Proto-Evangelium of James, for instance, is amongst some of that. Um, and the reason why those things happened is because a lot of the Jews that fled after the Roman invasion, and when the Talmudic rabbinic Judaism was coming, the modern form of it was coming into play uh, during the Council of Yavna, which happened under Roman control. They were controlling what the Jews were going to do at that time, and the head rabbi went along with it. That's really where the rabbinic Judaism and Talmudic Judaism gets its start, is right in there. So we're actually talking about 90 AD for Talmudic Judaism getting its start. And those of you who know about the problems of the Talmud will understand why they did what they did to get in the good graces of Rome. But there were a lot of Jews that wanted to keep their faith, but they were questioning why God didn't save them. They became what we know today as the Gnostics of Egypt, and they wrote in Coptic. That's a form of kind of of Egyptian, not the hieroglyphics, but it's basically, they didn't use the Hebrew, probably because they were trying to hide who they were in case those things got caught, got captured. But they are also talking about things that were kind of upset at God. They really were. Not all of them, but some of them were. Okay, and you'd have to read the entire Nag Hammadi thing. Elaine Pagels, you can look her up on the search engine that you have. Look up Nag Hammadi, Gnostic Gospels, Elaine Pagels. Now she's probably the most she's the most, I wouldn't want to say popular, but the most well known amongst most of the lay people that don't get into this thing real deep. And you can see what the Gnostic Gospels are alike. Some of them are really cool. Some of them are almost like New Age stuff, but not like current Gnosticism. The current Gnosticism is not the Gnosticism of these Jews who fled from Judea and went to Nag Hammadi, Egypt. Uh, some similarities, but it evolved from there. But there are some that are basic. The Gospel of Thomas, which I just mentioned, the Gospel of Philip, which I just mentioned, and also the Gospel of James, or the Proto-Evangelium of James. Those you should look at, okay? Because they give you an idea of what was really going on at the time without all the hocus pocus nonsense, okay? Some people might say, oh, but there were miracles. I'm not saying that there weren't. I'm saying that there's a lot of things that people claimed happened that may be questionable as far as actual events. Let's stick to the history. It's good to have faith, but you also need to understand that God works in very natural ways. Okay? So let's talk about the Proto-Evangelium of James, or the Gospel of James, right now. And this is going to frustrate some people, especially Catholics, but traditional Christians in general. And I question myself whether or not I should even go here today. But because of Roosevelt, I'm kind of laying this out, okay? Not to the detail that maybe you would like Roosevelt, but again, I'm trying to put a spark underneath people that they will go search some of these things out for themselves. I'm not trying to destroy anybody's faith, all right? But even Paul said, right, that eventually you have to leave the milk and get the meat. But he also said, I don't really care what happens as long as Christ is preached. Because if Christ is preached, then the truth will eventually cut its own way. All right, so I'm kind of going from that viewpoint. There's some danger in that, but I'm going to do it. So why do I bring up this Gospel of James? Well, you'll notice I have something written down here, okay? There are scholars who will say, and there are people in different, religious organizations that will say that the virginity of Mary was different than the virginity of the pagan cults. Why? Because they make a distinction between this conception by the Holy Spirit as opposed to these gods who were fathered in a what would be considered a normal way from one of the other gods. Okay, so if you look at the history of Jesus and even some of the things that happen in his life, the wine, for instance, the resurrection, some of his sayings. Again, I don't want to step on anybody's toes here. A lot of that is very similar to some of the what we would call pagan religions. Dionysus was the Greek aspect of this dying and resurrecting god. Bacchus was the same deity, but in the Roman pantheon. Osiris, right here, was the Egyptian pantheon member that these were taken after. And then we have Mithras, and then there are others. The point is, the idea of a virgin birth outside the natural processes of things was a pagan idea, not Hebraic. That's going to really bother some people. Some time ago, I talked about what virgin means in Hebrew. It doesn't mean a woman who has not had sex. It means that she has not had a firstborn child, breaker of the matrix. I'm not saying that you shouldn't be chaste. I'm not saying that a woman wants to be what would be considered in these circles damaged goods if she's, had this thing. The point is, it didn't mean that she didn't have sex. It means that she has not had the child yet. That's what it means in Hebrew. Okay? So what James talks about, well, let me read you something. Okay, I'm going to grab my Bible. Okay? I'm going to go to Luke. There are two summaries of the birth of Jesus in the New Testament, and only two. And we can go back to Isaiah where it says that a virgin shall conceive and have a child, and they'll call his name Emmanuel. But again, that virgin means that she's not had a firstborn child yet. That's all it means. In other words, the child is firstborn. He has a right to the birthright. That's what it means. The only other places it talks about this birth of Jesus in this kind of a way is in Matthew, which I'm not going to talk about today, all right, and in Luke. This is the King James Version. I know there are problems. For those of you who are scholars and all that, I know slight problems in translation, there are better things, but let's just read what the King James Version says, because I think this will give you an idea. Wow, there are all kinds of things. Let me see here. There's something else I might want to say. No, I don't want to do that. Okay. Listen to this very carefully. And in this, I'm starting at verse 26 in the first chapter of Luke. And in the 6th month, let me back up before I go there. The Gospel of James, the Proto-Evangelium of James, says that when Mary was born to her parents, that she was placed in the temple because they knew that she was going to be the mother of the Son of God. Go look Go read it yourself. In other words, how would you ensure? One of the things that the Jews say proves that Jesus isn't the Messiah is because Mary was obviously raped by a Roman soldier named Pantera. That's in the Talmud. So what that does is that pollutes Jesus's genealogy, does it not? That he's the fruit of a rape from a Gentile, no less. Do you see why they did that? There's no way. And this is why the Proto-Evangelium of James is so important. And this was written prior to the Talmud being written. So this wasn't written in response to that accusation of Pantera raping Mary in the Talmud. The Talmud was written to try to counter this. Do you understand? Do you see that? The Talmud is a commentary expounding on the Torah, the first 5 books of the Bible. And there's some good parts to it, and there's some very bad parts to it. As a matter of fact, basically, Jews follow the Talmud today more than they do the Torah. Yeah, that's right, Roosevelt. Yeah. See? Okay, so her parents, her mother Anna and her father, knew who she was. There's this big effort to make Mary, and I'm sorry, Catholics, I'm so sorry, but I'd be wrong if I didn't say it. I'm not attacking your religion. I'm just saying that historically there's some real problems with this, okay? With the idea that Mary was immaculately conceived. That's an effort to remove Jesus one step further away from the normal, natural birthing process. That's all I'm going to say about it, okay? Yahweh is actually the God of thunder, which is why I talked about the sons of thunder the other day. And we're going to get to that eventually, okay? All right, back to the James. So James says in the Gospel of James, not in the Epistle of James, the Gospel of James, the Proto-Evangelium, says that Mary was taken to the temple and raised in the temple so that her purity would be ensured. And I think that's true. I even wrote that in my book, The Crimson Thread. I wrote that in there because I think that's exactly what happened, because they knew who she was. She wasn't let out of the temple until she was 12 years old. Now, remember, we're talking 2,000 years ago. Women in those days, they matured a lot faster than they do today. Well, now they're adding hormones and stuff that are changing that. But the point is, she was considered a woman at 12. And even today, the Jews give the girls their bat mitzvahs at 12. Boys, their bar mitzvahs at 13. So it's still there, okay? Even today. They're probably not marrying them that young, but in those days they did. So Mary was betrothed to Joseph. And it's plain in the scriptures that Joseph had not known her until after, knowing meaning having sexual intercourse, okay? Until after, and that'll blow out a lot of Christians too, Catholics, etc., because they want to hold up Mary as a virgin in perpetuity. But I'm going to get to that in a minute. And I'm so sorry I've got to do this to you, but it's time that we grow up and we start looking at these things from a realistic point of view. You still have your faith. I did the whole thing on the Shroud of Turin because I completely 100% believe that is the burial cloth of Jesus, and that is his image on there. Okay, so that's the whole other thing. But we don't have to go into other hocus pocus stuff to get him there. So the Gospel of James again says that Mary was placed in the temple. She was raised in the temple, and then given to Joseph when she was 12 years old. Do I think it was Herod's temple? No. Because Herod wasn't Jewish, he had no right to build the temple. He was a convert Edomite. And it was a real problem. That was one of the basic problems between Jesus and some of his disciples about the temple at the time. No. Who was the legitimate high priest when Mary was born? Does anybody know? Okay, it wouldn't be the ones in the Herodian temple. As I explained in my book, The Crimson Thread, it would have been the real high priest, who was the teacher of righteousness, who had escaped when the Maccabees were thrown out of power by the Romans. His name was Menachem. I think he's the one that took care of Mary, and it was in an alternate temple. It could have been in On, Egypt, which I've talked about before, where a temple was built by the last legitimate high priest that's known, whose name was, oh rats, I forget his name right now. That's funny, I just looked that up too, but I've forgotten that. But anyway, the last legitimate, Onias. Sometimes I call him Canias, and I knew that wasn't right. Onias. Onias was the last legitimate high priest, and he built the temple in On, Egypt, because he knew that the temple that would be in Jerusalem would be defiled by the heathen, so to speak, the Gentiles, and by Edomites. But, however, they would have had a similar structure of some sort in Qumran. So it's my anticipation here that Mary was actually raised in basically a cloistered area in Qumran. James is the one that explains that as far as Mary being protected by the high priest. Okay? With that background, let's read Luke. And I'm sorry, I'm already almost 42 minutes into this, but let me read this. Okay. Well, I thought I had it. Hold on a second. I lost it. Okay. Sorry, verse 26. I was actually getting into Zacharias and Anna back here, which is interesting there too. If you read that about that whole situation with Zacharias and Anna, it's very important there as well. But let's go to verse 26. And in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God unto the city of Galilee named Nazareth. What's she doing in Nazareth? By the way, Nazareth, it does say the city of Galilee here, but the Nazarites were actually in Qumran. The Essenes were actually Nazarites. Jesus wasn't from Nazareth. No such city existed. But he was a Nazarene. He was part of the Nazarite movement, okay, which the Essenes were part of. So things like this are anachronisms that if you don't know the history, you get sucked into it. But let me keep reading here, okay? And the angel came in unto her. Oops, sorry, I missed it. And in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent from God into the city of Galilee named Nazareth to a virgin. Remember, that means not she hasn't had sex. That's true, but the real delineator is she hasn't had a firstborn yet, which has to do with the birthright. To a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. And the angel came in unto her and said, Hail, thou art highly favored. The Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women. And when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and cast in her mind what manner of salutation this should be. And she's only 12 years old. Just think what that was like. And the angel said unto her, Fear not. God's angels always say, God himself says that. You're supposed to be in awe of God, okay? Fear not, Mary, for thou hast found favor with God. And behold, now listen to this. He's not saying that she already has the child in her, like a lot of people think. Again, this is the King James Version, but it goes along with the Proto-Evangelium of James. Listen to this. And behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb. He didn't just say, you conceived and you have a little baby in you by the Holy Spirit. He didn't say that. He said, and behold, thou shalt conceive in thy womb, and bring forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. He shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest, and the Lord God shall give unto him the throne of his father David. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end. Then said Mary unto the angel, How shall this be, seeing I know not a man? She's not pregnant yet. What's his answer to her? And the angel answered and said unto her, The Holy Ghost shall, hasn't happened yet, shall come upon thee, and the power of the highest shall overshadow thee. Therefore, also that holy thing which shall be born of thee shall be called the Son of God. When Gabriel came to her, she wasn't pregnant yet. Now the question is, what was the process? I'm not going to go there today. But it has to do with her being in the temple, in the cloister, so to speak, with the high priest. The concept of the Father in the Dead Sea Scrolls is significant when it talks about the Father, God. When it talks about the Father, and you see that in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it's talking about a specific individual. No, Jesus is not mentioned in the Dead Sea Scrolls, not by the name Jesus. And I explained that a few minutes ago, and you're right. Yeshua is talking about the salvation of God, and it's in a very general thing. There was an individual allied with the Essenes who was real. But he wasn't with the Essenes all the time, because there were some problems with the Essenes. There were some problems with the Qumran people. Josephus identifies who the real Jesus is, but it's still cloaked in a lot of difficult historical information. I've talked about it before. Pilate did crucify him, and that's an historical record, but he was known as the Taheb, the restorer. And because he was showing the people the true way, trying to restore the implements of Moses, he was considered an insurrectionist. And Pilate did crucify him. And his name was likely Joseph. His given name was Joseph. Jesus being his calling, Yeshua being his calling. So I've thrown a lot at you today. We need to understand that even the story of the Garden of Eden is told to children. It's told in a way, because you don't tell, when children are young, you don't tell them how kids really come about. You don't do that. You might talk about the stork or, something else, but you don't really talk about it. It's something that you do when they're matured to understand, or when they come and finally ask the question. I'd like to go into more detail about the situation at Qumran. The real high priest at the time, who would have been the teacher of righteousness in Qumran. James, remember, and you can get this out of the New Testament. James was even considered the legitimate high priest in the New Testament, as opposed to Caiaphas and the subsequent high priests. It's all there. The struggle, the revolt against Rome, and their puppets, the Herodians, were real. And people had to be careful to guard their identities. Why do you think that the New World Order today, Gates and all these other people, are so bound and determined to inject you with something so that you can be positively identified? because they don't want this happening again. Hi, Jesse, Real BP Earthwatch. Nice to see you. They know that there is a seed, that there are children today that have the heart and mind of Jesus. The New Testament says that. He will know his own because they will be like him, right? Well, how is that? It can be by conversion, but it can also be for another reason. And I know I'm beating around the bush here. I've really given you some bad things here as far as attacking you, because I told Roosevelt today I didn't want to go here because merely speaking sometime is a force or coercion. And I don't want to do that to anybody. Mary actually means bitter. Miriam actually means bitter. So I saw somebody that says it. Mary means rebellion. It really means bitter. It's difficult to handle some of these things because they go against whatever the program was of those who have been teaching us for 2,000 years. We have to start looking at things from a mature point of view. In other words, no longer the milk, but the meat. And that's why I've done this today. Let me see if you have some questions here. And I'm not going to go way back. Let's see. Brandon Hebert says Virgin Mary never existed in the flesh. Wrong, female. And I'm not going to get into that discussion. No, she did. No, there wasn't a Virgin Mary in the sense that, you know, she was immaculate. She was immaculately conceived, or that Jesus was placed in there in her, and that was an immaculate conception. That's true. Jesus was born of the Virgin Mary, of Mary. He was her firstborn, and then she did have subsequent to that more children, and that's listed in the New Testament. No, they're not. They're not adopted because of Joseph's prior marriage. That would have been explained in there if that was the case. Okay, well, I don't see a whole lot of questions going on here. Probably blown everybody out of the water today. Again, my purpose in this, hi Felicia, how you doing? My purpose in this isn't to attack anybody's faith. My purpose in this is to get you to ask the questions. And sometimes the only way to do that is to hit you up beside the head with a 2x4. Okay? Jesus did what we all believe he did. As Hebrews explains, he cried to God to save him, to save his life. And I'm not talking about just what happened in the Garden of Gethsemane. He wanted God to save him from death. He went through everything that you know he did, and then God said, "Come and sit at my right hand." I'm not taking any of that away from him. I'm telling you that the fairy tales of virgin births in the pagan religion were carried over because of the Roman war on the Messianic movement, were carried over onto the Christian concepts and replaced. That's what happened. Virgin births don't happen in the Hebraic understanding of things. And I know, oh, but that all changed with Christianity. No. I'm just telling you, in my understanding of things and what I've shown you here tonight, it's not like that. It wasn't like that, and it's not like that today. As a matter of fact, the serpent and his seed hate you so much. What are they trying to do to you right now? They're trying to keep you from having kids. They're trying to destroy the relationship between men and women. They're trying to destroy the family. So, just take this information. And I know my handwriting is bad up here. Take my information. You don't have to make any decisions. You can keep with whatever faith you have. I'm not here to try to knock that down, but you need to ask the right questions and you need to go get the answers. Okay? And if you go to your normal religious leaders, they're stuck, they're compartmentalized, they're institutionalized, they're set in their ways. They're not willing to go where I'm trying to show you that you need to examine this. Okay? One final thing. We know, as I've explained, that many of the Dead Sea Scrolls were written during Jesus' lifetime. Not 200 years earlier. Some of them were. Some of them were. But many of them, as I explained, were written during Jesus' time because we know by the way they attack the Herodians for their marriage practices, marrying their nieces, the incest, the fornication. That wasn't the Maccabees. That was the Herodians, King Herod, Herod Antipater, who got it first. Then it passed on to Herod the Great. And then the one that crucified Jesus was Herod Antipas and took off John the Baptist's head. I forgot the name the other day because Antipater and Antipas are so similar. I had a brain cramp. Okay? The Dead Sea Scrolls, if there had been a miraculous virgin birth without the normal process, would have said something about it. But they didn't. Because the promise in Isaiah that everybody puts in for Jesus, that he would be born of a virgin and would be called Emmanuel, as I explained already, the idea of a virgin is that they have not had a firstborn child. That's it. That's all it means. A woman who has not had sex, who is not married in the Hebrew tradition, is called what? A maid. And woman is normally associated with a married female. So, if there had been this miraculous virgin birth, we would have heard about it in the Dead Sea Scrolls. The fact is, Mary was in the temple, guarded by the high priest. You make your own conclusions from there. I will say there's no way that she was raped by a Roman soldier by the name of Pantera. That's a lie in the Talmud. That would change his genealogy completely. That would change his entire seed. That's a lie in the Talmud. Okay. I know you're confused. This is a lot to unload on everybody. Nancy wanted me to get into, if somebody asked about John, who's John? Pantera was a soldier bellicose. You can look it up in the Talmud. Look up the Roman soldier Pantera. You can even look it up on one of your search engines and it'll come up and it'll tell you that they claim that he raped. Oh, I'm the Antichrist. I'm the Antichrist? All right. You know, basically, somebody who would call me that got me off topic there. That's the first time I've been called that. I've been called a lot of other things, but I've never been called that. No, I love Jesus. I love my great, 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 great grandfather, Joseph ben Joseph, Yeshua ben Joseph, Joshua ben Joseph. I look at the Shroud of Turin and what they've done with it. That is not a graven image because it's not made by man. It was made by the power of God. It is a testament. to the truth. That is my Father. And I know that that's my Father. Okay? I'm no Antichrist. I'm Antichrist. A lot of people worship Christ and they don't really know who he is. They believe fairy tales and what they're taught in church about, things. And it's not always true. I'm not saying it isn't, but you've got that's why I'm saying you have to grow up, you have to mature, you have to understand. Okay? You have to look at things as mature adults. Okay? So finally, again, there's no evidence that Mary was a virgin in the sense of the Christian tradition. No evidence of that at all. That was something that came about 2nd century and later. Virgin birth was, as Isaiah said, she hasn't had a firstborn child. Look it up in the Hebrew. Look it up in the Hebrew. Do that in Strong's or Gesenius, right? Okay. I'm done. Thanks everybody for coming. I know I had to do this early, but I did it to get it out of the way, number one. Number two, I figured if I got it now before everybody starts getting on the internet, I'm so wrong. Well, then you put up a channel and you explain where I'm wrong, Donna. Is that your name, Donna Kaiser? Put up a channel and explain. Show me if you can talk about these things and make sense of them. I'll watch it. Condemnation before investigation isn't real smart. Okay? Again, getting back to why I did this tonight and what I did, low internet usage, it's going to start picking up. I might lose the signal now or shortly. I wanted to get it out so that you all would have the evening to look at it. And plus, most likely, Monograph will be on tonight. He's doing live streams every night now, and I don't want to take away from his presentation. All right. Mrs. Cat, guess what? I did get a notice from a mutual friend, and I will be contacting you shortly. Okay, I've got your information. And yeah, I'd like to make you a mod. Actually, maybe I could do that right here, right now. Let's see if I can pull you up. Yeah, I can. I'll do it right here, Ms. Cat. Okay, it'll take a process to catch up, but I just did it. Okay, and I'll check it again later. You should be a mod next time it comes up. Okay. Thank you for getting a hold of our mutual friend, and I've done it. Thank all of you for coming. Thank you, Roosevelt, for encouraging me to go here. We'll talk more about James and John and James, son of Alphaeus, and the sons of thunder and what all that means at another time. But actually, believe it or not, I had to go here first, Roosevelt. I had to do this first. And I hope you understand too, Nancy, okay? We're going to a place that a lot of people are going to find uncomfortable. But if you think about it in real terms, it's actually glorious and a blessing. And it tells us more about who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. Not some pie in the sky, ethereal, playing harps in the clouds stuff. And it's not Gnosticism. A lot of people think it's Gnosticism. It's not. God works in the laws that he has set up. He doesn't violate his own laws. Okay. John Connor, I don't know who you're talking about. Are you talking to me? Have you been called a lewd, crude, rude bag of pre-chewed food, dude? I don't know if that's a joke or if you're being nasty. I'll let my mods decide on that, John Connor. This is why Jesus talked in parables. This is why he said, don't throw your pearls before swine. Matter of fact, Nancy, not too long ago. Nancy, I always bring you up because you helped me out so many times. Nancy told me, Roy, stop throwing your pearls before swine. Don't do that. Don't do that. This is what happens. You just get assaulted. Well, a lot like my father, then, aren't I? I'll throw out a pearl every once in a while, and those who want it, you can run with it. And those who want to, basically crucify me for it, well, the scriptures say something about that, don't they? Yeah, they do. All right, everybody, out here for the evening. Uh, Take this stuff and study it. You can go right on to the search engines. You don't necessarily have to go into, make a big deal about it. You're going to find a lot of information. It's a lot to digest. You may come up with entirely different ideas. Okay? It's fine. The point is, I want you to start going to the meat. We're coming upon a time right now where God wants you to have His law written in your hearts and in your minds, and He's willing to do it. And reaching out to Him, what does He say? If you draw nigh unto me, I shall draw nigh unto you. Let's find out who He really is. I know God's unknowable. The causeless cause is unknowable, but Jesus was brought to us so that we could see the image of the Father as He really is. He took on the seed of Abraham. He became one of us. Go study the Shroud of Turin. You can go to shroud.com if you like. A photographer who took all the pictures that I've put up from time to time back in 1978 when they were studying the Shroud. He's done a pretty good job on shroud.com. Okay? All right. Again, that's all for tonight. Thanks for coming. Y'all take care and make sure you think all these things over and make an effort, okay? Oh, yeah, black hole sun. When you've been told something for 53 years, it's hard to change it all up. I'm not asking you to change black hole sun. No, no, no. There's nothing wrong with holding on to your faith. But you want to find out what the truth is. Okay? The basic truth is Jesus took care of you. And I know that. But don't you want to know a little bit more about him? Don't you want to know a little bit more about the family that you're a part of? Me and 23 only goes so far. You know what I mean? Yeah. I shall write my law in their hearts and in their minds, and they shall be to me a people, and I shall be to them a God. Good night, everybody.